Greetings and welcome to Day 2 of Generations United's 21st Biennial Global Conference and the David S. Lederman Plenary Session, Sankofa, the Art of Intergenerational Storytelling. I've been so looking forward to today's opening session and excited to hear from our incredible presenters. When I was thinking about storytelling, I was remembering back to an intergenerational program I visited in Chicago several years ago. It involved an older griot, a West African term for a repository of oral tradition, and teenage rappers teaching each other their chosen art forms. Working together with mutual respect, they blended their creativity and put together a phenomenal closing program that stayed with me all these years. I wondered if a similar program still existed. I started searching, and it didn't take too long to find the Growing Griots Literacy Learning Program headquartered in Baltimore. The intergenerational pair you'll meet today, featuring seasoned griot Janice Green and her mentee, Naomi Reed, is amazing. I'm grateful to Ms. Green for directing me to take a further, deeper look into Sankofa, which helped give further shape to this session. It's my honor to turn the session over now to today's moderator, valued Generations United board member and cherished partner, Sarah Kostelik. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Good morning, everyone. This is my first Generations United conference, and I'm so pleased to be here with you today. Shamai, good morning in my native Alutiiq language. I'm Sarah Kostelik, a citizen of the native village of Yuzinki and the executive director of the National Indian Child Welfare Association, which is headquartered in Portland, Oregon. I'm a social worker by training and adjunct faculty at the Brown School of Social Work at Washington University in St. Louis. As I said, I'm so pleased to be here with you this morning and honored to welcome you to the David S. Lederman Plenary Session. Today's plenary is entitled Sankofa, the Art of Intergenerational Storytelling. Sankofa means to go back and fetch it. The Sankofa is a Ghanaian akanda, symbol of a mythical bird with its feet planted in the present, its body moving forward, and its neck craning back to keep sight of the past. But before we turn to our speakers, I wanted to share a little bit about my cultural context for storytelling. As I said, I'm Alutiiq. That's my language and cultural group. In the 1800s, there were more than 60 Alutiiq villages in the Kodiak archipelago of Alaska, with an estimated population of 13,000 people. Today, there are about 4,000 Alutiiq people living in 15 rural villages, 5 towns, and major cities. We've lived in our ancestral homelands for more than 7,500 years. You may not know it, but you actually carry a map of Alaska on your body. You have a hand map. If you spent any time with Alaska Native people, you'll know that we often tell people where we're from. We often identify the place where we're from by pointing with our fingers on our map of Alaska. So my family is from the native village of Yuzinki, which is near the top of the Kodiak archipelago, near Kodiak Islands. And oral tradition and storytelling were important to our people, and we had a number of significant storytelling traditions, but that was disrupted in the 1780s when we were colonized by the Russians, and that affected our storytelling practice. Oscar Quagwooly, another Alaska Native person, a Yupik person, describes how stories provide a cultural orientation and identity. He says that indigenous cultures rooted in oral tradition use mythology and stories for value creation and teaching what it means to be a human. Precisely because of the legacy of colonization that suppressed the transmission of culture and identity, traditional storytelling as a way for youth to learn is important to Alutiiq people. It connects youth to their families and our core values, building a strong sense of identity and wellness. Most of what we know today about Alutiiq storytelling traditions has been published in a doctoral dissertation by Dr. Alicia Drabek. So I want to acknowledge her work, which I'll share with you. As Drabek writes, storytelling as a traditional vehicle for knowledge acquisition is multifaceted and offers a richness in learning that's difficult to surpass. Shared stories build a common experience, develop the art of listening and symbol association, foster social skills and an understanding of human motives and patterns of behavior, invoke a physical response through language, prepare us for life through experiential connections, transmit cultural traditions, strengthen identity, and demonstrate the right behavior within values. All of these complex lessons and more can be conveyed through the simple story passed down from generation to generation. As she goes on to say, across millennia, stories convey their lessons and have sustained generations as they're retold and become integrated into our minds as a means of interpreting and comparing our experiences to what we've been told through story. Storytelling is a powerful learning tool that links us to our ancestors. And finally, ancestrally and contemporarily, storytelling is done to perpetuate life, to convey values and a worldview, as well as heal from and honor past hardships. Asserting who we are as a people, how we see the world, and what matters to us most is the job of storytelling. Our Alutiiq communities are undertaking a project this summer to reinforce the connection between generations and to reassert our worldview and values. Our Alutiiq Museum is partnering with community members to publish 60 legends collected from Alutiiq storytellers over the last 150 years. Some of these tales are from old publications, others are from the recordings of elders and explorers' journals. The anthology will include everything from creation and origin stories to heroes' tales and myths about mythical beings. To illustrate the book, the museum invited community artists to create graphic art. More than 30 artists of all ages are participating in making original works. Paintings, drawings, comics, fabric art, and digital designs will help share and interpret the legends, which will be published in November. As Drabek says, storytelling can become a healing process, both for storytellers and for their audience, reinforcing our sense of identity and belonging to our identifying group, building unity, well-being, and a sense of purpose or meaning in life. Storytelling carries the power to correct history, stopping inaccuracies or untruths from being passed on, which is particularly important for Indigenous people whose histories have been told by our conquerors. Then, in the larger sense, stories seek to empower a community, becoming tools for reclaiming lost traditions or lands and validating actions within the community's lived context. In essence, communities use stories to function as change agents, drawing attention to and addressing inequities of power. Now I'd like to introduce our amazing speakers. Janice Curtis Green, a professional storyteller and mentor in the Growing Griots literacy learning program, and her mentee, Naomi Reed, will introduce us to the art of Black storytelling.
Good afternoon, everyone. That is my early morning allergy voice. My name is Janice Curtis Green. I am the former president of the National Association of Black Storytellers, and I am the former president of the Griot Circle of Maryland. The Griot Circle is one of the affiliates of the National Association of Black Storytellers. And the Growing Griots Literacy Learning Program is our youth affiliate. Now, before I begin, I'm already out of place. In the African oral tradition, I would like to ask permission of my elders to speak. I'm going to look in the chat, or somebody turns on the mic. I'm going to assume, since nobody is giving me permission, Now you have to be over 73 to be my elder. All right, that I have permission to speak. The next thing I want to do is show, we have another young lady on. I am a mentor for the Growing Griots Literacy Learning Program. I'm going to start our presentation by pouring libation. Libation is a way that our African ancestors honored the ancestors who have gone before them. And we have to recognize that it is on the shoulders of our ancestors that we stand. And we pour libation, which is a Ghanaian tradition, by pouring water into a plant or into a larger body of water. The plant represents, the leaves are our hope. Those are our young people who are growing out of the soil, the dirt from which our ancestors came and have returned. And as we pour water, we offer a libation statement to welcome the ancestors into the sacred storytelling place, all right? So I'm going to ask my mentee, Naomi Reed, to answer when I say Ashe or Yebo. It's call and response. She is going to respond with Ashe, which means let it be so. It is a word of affirmation. To our Creator, who is called by many names, we shall call him or her love. To our Creator, Ashe.
Ashe.
To the natural, the four seasons, the four winds, the four elements, and the four directions, we say Ashe.
Ashe.
To our ancestors in Mother Africa, the mother of us all, for those who stayed behind, for those that did not survive the Middle Passage, and to those who did, we say Ashe.
Ashe.
To our ancestors in history, those famous and those unknown. And because we live in Maryland, I will call the names of Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass, and we say Ashe.
Ashe.
And to those people in your own lives, your parents, your aunties, your grandparents, teachers, those who have made an impact on who you are today, I'll call the names of my parents, Thomas and Evelyn Curtis, and unfortunately, my sons, who became ancestors far too young, Calvin and Barry Thompson, and we say Ashe.
Ashe.
You think in your mind of someone who you benefited from, who left an impression, and I will have a 2-minute moment of silence or a 30-second moment of silence while you think of that person. Ashe. To not only my sons, but to those who have become ancestors too young. Trayvon Martin, Freddie Gray. We say Ashe. And of course, the last pour is for those who will come, those who are unborn, who one day call us ancestors. And we hope that we leave a legacy for them to follow. Ashe.
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 Asheo.
Asheo.
One of the things that we do in the Growing Griots Literacy Learning Program, well, since she's already spoken, I'll let Ms. Naomi Reed, one of the mentees and one of the students of our Growing Griots Literacy Learning Program, introduce herself, and then I'll explain what the program is.
Hello, everyone. My name is Naomi Reed. I'm 13 years old, and I've been a member of the Growing Griots Literacy Learning Program for 3 years. What I really enjoy about the program is that I get to express myself and just I've always been one for talking. I just like to talk a lot. So this class has given me an opportunity to be able to speak and tell stories and just be creative.
Since you've already mentioned Sankofa, and this is the name of this session, and it's already been spoken about, let me go into it a little bit further. It's an Adinkra symbol from Ghana. The word Sankofa is an Akan tree word. It means go back and fetch it. They say go back and get it. I like fetch it. It is to inspire people whose history and culture has been either left behind or, in my case, has been stolen. It's inspiring them to go back and fetch your history, your culture, and your traditions, and especially your stories, because without them, your feet cannot be grounded in the present. The Sankofa's bird's feet are grounded in the present. But as we tell our young students in the Growing Griots Literacy Learning Program, you cannot move forward as the Sankofa body is moving forward unless you go back, and that's why the head is craning back, to find out from whence you come. Who are your people? What are the traditions? What is the culture, the mores, the stories, the lessons, the proverbs? And what you see in the Sankofa bird's mouth is a seed, or sometimes an egg. And that's because he is planting the seed of the future for those who will come. And like Hansel and Gretel left crumbs for you to follow, the Sankofa bird, the mentors of the Growing Griots Literacy Learning Program, are leaving seeds of hope for the young people in our program to follow. One of the modules in our program is the Sankofa Intergenerational Oral History Project. And that is a project I'm proud to say that I began in, what was it, you weren't even there yet, Naomi, 2017. And this is a project where we were trained by Professor Ruth Hill from the Schlesinger Library in Massachusetts, how to take oral histories. And we paired our growing griots with an elder. You had to be 80 or more to be considered an elder. So I wasn't an elder then. And we had interview questions that the young people had developed themselves. The purpose was to find out what it was like being Black in America and how these elders survived. We heard stories of people who had dogs sicked on them. We had stories of people who started out with absolutely nothing and went on to own several houses. One of the stories I remember is from Gwen Marable, who grew up in an integrated area. So she went to an integrated high school, but the colored students could only take swimming on the last period of the day on Friday, so that the pool could be sanitized and cleaned out before Monday and the white students could begin taking swimming. These young children develop a bond and they stay in contact with the people that they have interviewed, and they have learned so much. Now, the purpose of Black storytelling, and that's all one word, is to remind the children that their roots are from Africa. It is to teach them history and truths that are either not taught in schools, or, as the young woman said at the beginning, when our history is told by someone else, truths are not told. Just like the Oklahoma massacre was hidden for so many years. And the person who was 107, who had survived that massacre, hearing her tell her story was more powerful than any history book or any pictures could have made it, because she remembered hiding in her home and hearing the screams. So this is what we glean from telling a story. Now we pour libation to remember the ancestors and to remember those and to bring people back to life by our words. I would like to share with you now a sample of Black storytelling that Naomi and I are performing for you. Thank you. Tech.
The Cowtail Switch, a traditional African folk tale. Near the Liberian rainforest, on a hill overlooking the Calvary River, there was a village named Kundi. You could see the rice and the cassava fields stretch out in all directions, and the smoke from the fireplaces in the round clay huts seeped through the palm branch roof, so it formed a cloud over the whole village. The men and boys would hunt and fish in the river with their nets, and the women would sit out front of their huts, grinding the grain with their wooden mortars. The wind was warm and it was a beautiful place to live.
In that village lived Ogalusa and his wife and his many children. One day, Ogalusa left his hut to go out hunting. He took his tools from the wall and left, but he did not return. His wife and his children went through their day, and as night fell, they asked, "Where is Ogalusa?" But days turned to weeks, and weeks turned to months, and soon they forgot about Ogalusa's disappearance.
While Ogalusa had disappeared, another son was born to him. They named him Paulie. Now, as the months went by, Paulie began to crawl and coo and gurgle, and finally he sat up and he looked around, and his first words were, "Where is my father?" And then the other sons began to inquire among each other, "Yes, where is father?" They were out in the fields and they came in and they said, "Father should have been home a long time ago. We must go and look for him." And so they gathered their things up and they went into the rainforest, but they got lost. But every time they got lost, another son would find the path until they wound and wound, and they entered a clearing. And there they saw Ogalusa's bones alongside his rusted weapons. And they surmised father must have been killed during the hunt.
But then one son came forward and said, "I know how to arrange the bones into a human shape." And so he bent down and he picked up the bones and he put them into the shape of a man.
The next son said, "So you got bones, but I know how to put sinews and flesh and cover those bones into a human being." And he did. He began to put sinews and flesh and veins, and he stepped back and admired his work.
"What is this? We cannot take mother back a piece of meat. I know how to put blood into his body." And so he moved his arms around and started to fill the blood into Ogalusa's body.
But it was still a body with blood. So another son stepped forward and said, "I know how to put breath back into our father." And so he bent down and he covered Ogalusa's mouth with his own, and he began to breathe, breathe until Ogalusa's chest began to rise and fall.
"We cannot take mother back a puppet. I know how to give father the power of movement." And so he started to rub his hands on his body and massage his muscles until Ogalusa's fingers started to twitch and his arms began to move. And then he sat up.
"I can put the finishing touches on our father." The last son said, "I can give our father the power of speech." And so he went to Ogalusa sitting there and he rubbed his ears and he massaged his tongue, and Ogalusa said, "Where are my weapons?" So the sons gathered up the weapons, the rusted weapons, and Ogalusa, and they began to go home, and they went the same way they came so they wouldn't get lost again, until they arrived back in the village.
Ogalusa returned to his hut, and his wife prepared him a bath and some food to eat. And he did not leave the house for 4 days. And on the 5th day, he went outside and shaved his head, for that is what people do when they return from the land of the dead.
Then they slaughtered a cow, and they used his meat to prepare a feast, but they took that cow's tail and wove it into a cow tail switch. They braided it. They hung beads and ornaments all on it, and cowrie shells. They made a huge feast Ogalusa carried that cowtail switch with him wherever he went, to important meetings, and people were in envy. Then they held a big feast, and they cooked that meat from the cow, and the women prepared all sorts of vegetables and dishes and desserts. And they had plenty of palm wine, too. Everybody was having a great time.
Many bold men came forward and asked Ogalusa for his cowtail switch, but he always refused. Little children and women would plead with him, saying, "Please, I want your cowtail switch. Will you give it to me?" But he would always refuse.
Then Ogalusa stood up and stepped forward, and everyone got quiet to listen to what he had to say. He said, "A long time ago, I went into the rainforest to hunt, but I was killed by a leopard. My bones lay there along with the rusted weapons until my sons came to find me, and they brought me back from the land of the dead. Now I will give my cowtail switch to the son who had the biggest hand in bringing me back from the dead."
And so an argument started. The first son stood up and said, "I should be the one to get the cowtail switch. I helped you all when you got lost."
No, and you put the bones, but I had to put flesh all on the bones so he looked like a person.
"Well, I gave him blood.
Well, I gave him breath.
I had to rub my hands all over him to give him movement."
Ooh, but I gave him the power of speech. And soon they broke out in a fight.
Other people joined the argument as well. Some people saying the son that gave Ogalusa movement should get the cowtail switch. Others saying the son that gave him breath should get the cowtail switch. Others saying they should share it since they did an equal amount of work. Soon, Ogalusa stomped forward and said, "Be quiet."
And everybody hushed. Ogalusa stepped forth with that cowtail switch, and he bent down, and he put it in the hands of his youngest son, Paulie. And everyone remembered that his first words were, "Where is my father?" And they all knew that Ogalusa was right.
For it is a saying among them that a man is not really dead until he is forgotten. And that is why we pour libation. Ashe, Yebo, Amen.
Amen.
I woke up one morning and saw a beautiful butterfly, and it filled me with so much joy. Well, I began to cry, and thinking that I was sad, the butterfly said to me, "Girl, what have I done to cause you so much misery?" I said, "Oh no, butterfly, these are not tears of sadness or strife. These are tears of joy for God's gift to my life. I have family and friends to brighten up my day, and even when hard times fall, God's love, like these tears, well, it washes them away." Butterfly said, "Well, how can that be? Because I'm just a little bug. God cannot hold you or kiss you or give you a hug." I said, "Oh no, butterfly, you're a reminder of God's greatest gift to me, that only when the body dies does the spirit become truly free." Butterfly said, "Oh, now I understand. It's like the caterpillar had to die so that I could become this beautiful butterfly." And with that, he spread his wings and he gently flew away. So I waved, closed my window, and started my day. But the sun shone a little brighter and I felt good inside because the ancestors had transitioned. They had not truly died. And if we tell their story, their spirits will never die. They will be forever remembered like that beautiful butterfly. Ashe, Yebo, Amen.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Growing Griots Literacy Learning Project, Janice and Naomi. We so appreciate what you shared with us. I made some notes about the practice of asking for permission to speak. In our culture, sometimes we even preemptively ask for forgiveness if something we say offends someone, because it's not our intent to offend, it's our intent to have good relationships with everyone. So we may even apologize in advance if something we say offends someone. But I heard Janice talking about affirming our connection to our ancestors, affirmation that connects generations, going back to fetch your history and your stories, and not being able to go forward unless we go back. So thank you so much for those important words. It's something that I believe we'll all take with us.